What is the dumbest thing you did because you were horny? Story 1. Dyed my hair black. My roommate was doing it, and the girl helping him was redonkulously hot. She came into the living room and told me, "We have some extra dye. I think you would look hot with black hair." I looked at her in that lime green tube top and said, "That sounds like a great idea." I found out I was allergic to hair dye when 3 days later my head swelled up and I looked like that orc general that attacked Minas Tirith in Return of the King with a full head of Elvis black hair. It took a whole month of medication for it to go away, as my head was bright red under the hair and secreting a fluid that made my hair hard as a rock. Fun times. Since it keeps coming up, no, I did not hook up with her, especially not in orc face. Story 2. In my senior year of high school, I was supposed to take AP tests all day. It would have looked good for college. Well, all the other grades had the day off, and my boyfriend was a year younger, thus being a grade below me. He picked me up to take me to school, and since his mom worked all day, we went right to his house since we couldn't do mine because my parents worked from home. It went great until his mom came home to check on him. So he basically shoved me into his closet. It wouldn't have been a problem, except it wasn't even like a full closet. It was half the size of standard closets. She left and then decided to come back and bring him lunch. I was in that closet for over 2 hours, and my phone was at 10% when I first crawled in there. I ended up just sitting in the dark for about 45 minutes of it. Anyway, our wedding is in a few months. Story 3. Paid $2 for a massage app on my Xbox that was supposed to make my controller vibrate. It didn't do anything for me, and I forgot to refund it, so now I just have this random-ass massage game in my library. Story 4. Friend's hubby called up one of those 800-call hotlines decades ago and fell asleep. The person on the other end kept the call going for hours, thousands of dollars in the next bill which he refused to pay, so the phone company turned the phone off. They had to get a cell phone for the house as a replacement. Story 5. When I was a kid, my dad would frequently take me to his job and give me meaningless tasks to help him out. He was a property manager for a secure gov building, federal guards at the doors, etc. Anyways, he had his office in the basement and was left alone down there by everyone else in the building. He would smoke cigarettes down there, blast music, etc. When I was 13, I went with him to work one day, and he gave me the job of using an electric sander to take grime off of copper pipes in one of the machine rooms. I was left alone to my task for hours, and about an hour in, I realized how incredibly powerful the vibration was on the sander. One thing led to another, and I ended up grinding the handle of the sander on my dick. After I finished, I remember even at 13 saying to myself, "You're really weird, dude." Never told anyone. Till now, story 6. Climbed into a friend's bed in the middle of the night without any discussion of it whatsoever. I still regret it to this day and feel like a sleazebag. He asked me to leave. Story 7. Several years back, a woman I had been flirting with called me in the middle of the night one time because she wasn't feeling well and asked if I could pick up some medicine and bring it to her place. Went to her place not expecting too much other than maybe earning some brownie points for dropping off the meds. Anyway, she invites me in and asks if I could spend the night with her. That, of course, gets me all titillated. However, by the time we get into bed, she's all tired and drowsy despite her best attempt at acting seductive. Next thing I know, I'm lying in bed next to her with my arm pinned under her body while she's snoring away and farting. I end up lying like that for the rest of the night. Got maybe 30 minutes of sleep that entire night, and of course, I then had to get up to work a whole shift in the morning. At least I did earn some brownie points for that BC we ended up dating for not quite a year afterwards. Had something similar happen 30 PD years ago. I went to the bar one night for a beer. I spotted one of my old girlfriends there sitting at a table with a bunch of foreign sailors. She looked like she was tripped out and not all there. I got her up on the dance floor and asked if she was okay, and she said she wasn't, so I waltzed her to the fire exit and took her home. I suspected they had slipped a roofie or something in her drink. I sat up by her bed all night to make sure she was okay. She was fine in the morning and remembered enough about the night before that I didn't have to do any explaining. I also had to work after. That part wasn't any fun either. Story 8. I was helping my dad close up the sailboat for the winter. We took the seat cushions out and the long ones had to go in the car between us. Kind of stacked up like a wall so we could only see each other's heads. Teenage hormones kicked in on the hour ride home, and I proceeded to rub one out while looking out the window. Many moons later, I told my brothers, who then proceeded to tell my dad. I always wondered why you were so quiet on that trip. Story 9. Connected with a friend's ex who I knew had feelings for me. Went to catch up over lunch. Ended up spending all day drinking with her. Then spent some time at the outdoor area of an absolutely packed bar. Neither of us were staying in places we could have people spend the night, so hired a late hotel room. When I got in the door, she immediately vomited all over the room and spent the next 2 hours crying on the floor, saying she loved me while I did my best to clean up. Whoops, story 10. I accidentally locked my girlfriend and I outside her family's cabin while we were naked with 3 ft of snow around us. We were going skinny dipping in their hot tub and forgot to bring our clothes outside with us, so I had to run about 100 feet buck naked through 3 feet of snow to get back in the front door. Story 11. I had it so bad for this Chinese girl at university back in 2004, and she would not give me the time of day. I did everything I possibly could. Then, in a moment of insane desperation and browsing stuff during the earlier days of the internet, I found some sort of self-proclaimed wizard living in California who specialized in love spells, and I kid you not, my 20-year-old brain thought it was a good idea to send said wizard $200 USD to cast the spell. Suffice it to say the spell did not work. To this day, I still can't believe how stupid I was. Male hormones are ridiculous things. Story 12. Let a chick I was dating move in after only 3 months of being together. Found out 2 months later that she was having another guy over while I was working nights. Confronted her about it, and she proceeded to squat, refused to leave, in my apartment for nearly 6 months due to laws not allowing me to remove her on my own. I ended up having to take her to court to finally get her out. Story 13. I went to a clothing-optional beach once, expecting to see a lot of topless sunbathing. Instead, I learned the hard way that it's populated by wrinkly old men with big bellies. I thought, maybe all the ladies are hiding further up the beach where the bushes can cover them from all the states. Turns out I was completely wrong. Story 14. Drove over an hour for a booty call on a weekday. Stayed night and ended up being late for work. I tried to lie and say it was my alarm, but my neck was covered in hickeys. I didn't get written up because my boss thought it was funny, but I did get a talking to at the end of the day. Story 15. Many years ago, I had one of those abdominal wraps that is supposed to exercise your abs by sending small electrical shocks to cause involuntary contractions. Tried it on another area and didn't really feel like anything except little non-painful shocks, but still pretty dumb. Thankfully, I didn't sterilize myself. Story 16. Went to X's apartment after clubbing one night, knocked on front door 2 a.m., climbed up to second floor balcony to knock on sliding glass door, but somehow I was on the wrong unit's balcony, and I had to jump and run off. Story 17. There was a guy like that in my first year in college. Had a baby a few months before the semester started. He was an overweight ginger with a Viking beard and a love of ball caps and heavy metal shirts. Showed up one day with like a giant spiderweb of oddly colored crustiness on his back shoulder. He was bragging he barely made it to campus because his girlfriend was finally in the mood months after giving birth, and had been at it on and off since last night. Politely pointed out he may have put on an old shirt from last night this morning, and he went paler as it dawned on him. Then he shrugged and said it was probably him blowing his nose in the middle of the night, and continued bragging. Story 18. I was freshly out of a relationship with my abusive ex, and I just wanted the first after him to not mean anything and not be with anyone important, nor anyone I'd meet again. So I went on this anonymous dating site for hookups local to my region and just went with the first and the best person. Off I went to the capital without telling anyone at all where I was going or with whom. We met at a station in the outskirts of a suburb. I got into his car and he took me to a parking lot close to the airport. We had fun in the back where he had folded down his back seat, and then he drove me back to the main train station. I did some shopping for new underwear, went to the toilet and changed into fresh underwear. Freshened up and then took the train back to arrive at church in time for rehearsal in my church choir. I don't know his name or anything. Couldn't pick him out of a lineup. Super dangerous. I could have been abducted or worse. Story 19. I helped break into a girl I knew for her apartment. We got dropped off by a cab at her apartment late at night after the bars closed. Then she realized she didn't have her keys and her roommates were not home. It was on the 4th floor, and each floor had balconies. So I asked if her balcony was unlocked, and she said yes. So we triple-checked I was looking at the right balcony, and I started climbing. At each floor, I would stand up on the railing and then hold on to the ceiling. The problem was each floor required a little leap of faith, where I had to hop about a foot and grab the bottom of the railing on the next floor. Then I could pull myself up. So freaking stupid. I could have so easily missed the grab and never would have landed back on the railing. 3 a.m., drunk. Thankfully, the balcony door was unlocked. That would have been terrible. Story 20. I jumped off a second-story balcony landing barely between some parking barriers, cement poles sticking out of the ground. My friends locked me in their apartment because I was drunk, and they didn't want me walking home, but I was convinced there were girls out there, so that happened. Story 21. Drove in the middle of the night from the west suburbs of Detroit, tied up near the thumb of Michigan, to hook up with a girl I had been chatting with on AIM for a few weeks. I don't live in Michigan. I was staying there with a buddy to play hockey for the summer. It was 2002. No iPhone or GPS. I could have gotten so lost, or have walked into a horrible situation. but here I am on Reddit telling the tale. Story 22. When I was 14, I got my first job night cleaning the office where my mother worked in nursing administration. It was a 1, maybe 2-hour job that I regularly took over 5 hours to complete because I faffed off, ate desk candy, and played with the office computers. I also did an atrocious job of cleaning. Well, this was in the early 90s, and one thing that was really taking off at the time were phone lines. I, being a dumb kid and having zero idea that phone numbers could be tracked, found an ad for one of these lines in a newspaper that was on someone's desk and decided to call it. Next night, I did it again. And again. After about a month, I had racked up over $800 in phone line surcharges. At that time, the charge would just be appended to your phone bill. The office manager found the charges on the bill and immediately put 2 and 2 together. She handled it very professionally, approaching my mother privately and asking her if she had any idea where these charges could be coming from. My mother subsequently went off on me that night, and that's the story of how I almost got my mother fired, and also worked for 2 months without pay to compensate the company for losses. All told, she and I both got very lucky. The office manager didn't pursue legal action or civil restitution, and was willing to let me work off the charges. My mother beat the crap out of me, though. Story 23. Got called by a girl I was seeing at 2 in the morning to come round to hers. Spent $50 on an Uber there to find that I couldn't get into her dorm building as she had fallen asleep. It was raining, and I don't have any more money to get back home, so I climbed her building, which was 3 stories, using pipes and other features on the building, and when I got to the roof, I had to drop onto the path leading to her room. The building has a square open courtyard in the middle of the building. Of course, her door was locked, and upon knocking and even kicking at her door for a good 20 minutes, I decided it wasn't worth waking up the whole building or potentially getting arrested for breaking in, so I called her friend, and she told me to come sleep in her bed, which was a lifesaver. Woke up in the morning and went to her room. When she saw me, she was really surprised, apologized, and explained she didn't remember inviting me around. Story 24. When I was a freshman in high school, they brought everyone into the auditorium to watch the school production of Romeo and Juliet. The actors were 2 seniors, and they were heavily making out and basically dry humping in at least 50% of the scenes. Seriously, I don't know how the school got away with this, but these kids were committed to those roles. Anyway, I got so worked up I couldn't help but squeeze my legs together, and by the time I stood up, I had soaked through my jeans and had to tie my sweatshirt around my waist.